Horizon has by now, as a franchise, sold 38 million copies. Now, the lady who has posted this has said, yeah, that's crazy sales numbers between two games. And then somebody chimed in, it's actually like more games. And they were mentioning, okay, there was also the Lego Horizon game. And then there was the Call of the Mountain, which was the VR game. Let me just put it that way. When I have seen the sales numbers specifically for those two, those are so minuscule that, technically, when we are talking about like 48 million sales, we are basically really talking about two games. Those two didn't really have any impact, to be honest, or not really that significantly. So, I do find it great that people are still interested in this. And there was also somewhere a mention like, it's interesting to see that a franchise that's been so, let's say, ignored by the media, and that for whatever reason many gamers not even talk about, it's interesting that it has sold so many copies. And I do have to say I am a fan of the franchise as well. I mean, you can see it on my channel. I'm just playing it currently, the Forbidden West. There are things which I like, there are things which I don't like, but let's not go into the details here. But in general, what I do appreciate here on that game is the whole setting. So the idea behind it, and how much time and how much dedication went into creating the game with all these details. When you are roaming around the games world and you gather all these information, the little snippets, whether it's from the past or the current time, it puts together a really interesting picture of what happened and what's currently going on, and you see it through like various people. And I do like it that they have paid attention to even such minuscule details, like in Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, there was this point where you could find these vantage points, and the vantage points were introduced through a specific person from the past who has had personal experiences, or something happened in the life of that particular person, which the person was talking about. But through that, you've got good glimpses into the past, what the past was like for the people back then, back in the day. And I do like it that they not just paid attention to the entirety of the main story, but they took the time to really play around with these little side stories and quests and these extra little details. And that's what I appreciated really on the game as such. So it is really a game that was clearly created with a lot of love. You can see that the people who have made it have been thinking about how to make the game more enjoyable. At least the first one. The second has already a couple of changes which I'm not so fond of, I will be honest, whether it's in terms of the gameplay or the map size, but that's just my personal problem. But in general, I really do like it, and I'm really looking forward to finishing this second one and for the third one, so yeah. Louis is asking, would you say that Horizon has normie appeal? Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. What makes an RPG, for example? You have certain decisions to make during the game, and it will highly affect on how the game ends, on the end result that you're getting. You have, for example, the skill trees in a certain manner set up, and you have to sometimes think tactically which skills you want to invest into, because you simply will not have enough points throughout the whole game to have them all, right? So there's the, let's say, things that you have to think about when you are playing, let's say, a standard RPG. Combat is a big part of it, and it's usually, even on the lighter levels, it's not so easy to go through, right? What happened with Horizon and how Horizon was set up was basically there is no choice. So I have to give this, I have to acknowledge this. You don't really have any choice. The game is preset. You are going in a certain direction. you have certain options when you are replying, like you can reply in a polite manner, you can reply in a nasty manner and a sarcastic manner, but it's not having any effect on the outcome. Okay, so it's basically not really shaping anything else than maybe aside from a side remark here and there from some NPC or from some person that's going to talk to Aloy. So it's not something where the people would have to pay attention to how I have to decide, and the people are just interested in the story. The combat, if you set it to a like story, so the lowest level is the story level, the difficulty level, you have basically zero combat. So even somebody who's not fond of combat can just go through the game without really any big hassle, and again just experience really the story. It's like a kind of like an interactive movie, more or less, and I think that's why it has a bigger appeal. If we are talking about the skills, for example, as well, like the tree was not very complicated, and you have gathered enough points throughout the game that you were able to like have everything in the skill tree, so you were not really limited in any way. Again, it makes it easier for people who are not really hardcore gamers to play the game and to go through it relatively easy. So it's more like I said, like an interactive movie. It's fun to play for the people. If they want to increase the difficulty and they have this option, they can play around with it a little bit more. And then you might have some people who are, let's say, normies, but then start to be gamers because they've experienced a nice game that they liked, and now they will be looking into more games and maybe spend more time on other games. I think it's a good like entry game for non-gamers as well as like normies. So I do think, yes, it does have a big appeal because it's kind of light on the on certain aspects of the games or RPGs or however I want to call it, right? So yeah, it does have a normie appeal, and I think that's also the reason why it sold so many copies, right? And hand in hand with that, when we are talking about Horizon, I'm not sure if you remember, but I did make a vid. It was 7 months ago, almost 8, I think by now, which was talking about like this suspicious lookalike, and that was about the Light of Motiram, and that's a game from Tencent. As you know, they are Chinese, and Tencent has made a game which is technically a complete copycat. So if you look at the game, Sony has had a look as well, and it happened what many people were wondering about. Sony has now sued Tencent. So basically, one Western giant has now sued a Eastern giant about a game that sold 38 million units worldwide. So we are not talking about some peanuts. We are really talking about a heavy financial impact here. So there's like two colossus now fighting with each other, and I'm really wondering what this will be like what will happen and how they will settle. What is an interesting bit here is that actually, from what I understood, I'm not sure if it's mentioned here or in the other post that I have seen, Tencent has actually originally like tried to acquire the rights to create like this kind of spin-off game that they have created, and Sony didn't agree, and yet they made the game anyway. They just called it differently, but it's a complete ripoff. Like, let me maybe show you here. So you can see here, for example, it's a nice comparison. So on the left side, you can see that's the Chinese Light of Motiram, and then on the right side, you can see that's from Horizon. It's a complete ripoff. It's whether it's the way how the main character is dressed or these mechanical robot things, whatever. And yeah, that's the newest information. I think that's like also 2 days ago or something like that. So I am wondering what will happen, because for now I think they are trying to stop the game from being released, and the lawsuit is currently like demanding only 150k in damages. and wants access to all of Light of Motiram's materials so it can destroy them. So basically they're now asking only for a tiny amount of money if we are considering like that's this huge Tencent and huge Sony. 150k is like nothing, but of course they only ask for it like if the game never comes out, this ripoff, and if it gets completely destroyed. In knowing the Chinese and knowing Tencent, I highly doubt that this is what's going to happen. So I am really curious now how this one is going to play out.